Tom Hanks stepped onto the plane, a quiet relief settling over him. After a long week of meetings in Washington, D.C., his mind already drifting to the comfort of his Los Angeles home where he could unwind and just be Tom, the guy who once scooped ice cream at a corner shop. The cabin hummed with the gentle bustle of a full flight, passengers easing into their seats, some flipping through well-worn magazines, others chatting softly about their plans, the warm scent of coffee drifting through the air as flight attendants moved with practiced calm. He adjusted the strap of his carry-on bag, its familiar weight a reminder of countless trips, and made his way to his first-class seat, a small perk he'd earned after years of hard work, not just a luxury, but a chance to rest before the next round of chaos. Tom settled in, the soft leather cradling his tired frame, and stowed his bag beneath the seat ahead, his eyes catching on the world outside the window where the tarmac shimmered under the late afternoon sun. Then he noticed an older man moving down the aisle, his steps slow but steady, a frail figure wrapped in a faded jacket that hung loose on his shoulders, a cap perched on his head with "The Veteran" stitched in gold across the front. The cap wasn't flashy. It was the kind earned through sacrifice, a quiet badge of honor that spoke of battles fought long ago, and Tom felt a tug of recognition, a deep respect for what that man must have seen, what he must have given. Most passengers didn't look up, too busy with their phones or adjusting their armrests, but Tom saw the weariness in the man's posture, the way he gripped each seat for support, not just from age, but from a life heavy with memory. The flight attendant guided him toward the back, to a tight row in economy where the seats were close and the space unforgiving, and something stirred in Tom, a sense that this wasn't right, that a man who'd served so much deserved more. He stood, his voice warm and clear. "Sir, please take my seat up here. I'd be honored." The old man paused, turning to look at Tom, his eyes cloudy with years but bright with a sharp, quiet wisdom, a flicker of surprise softening his weathered face as he shook his head gently. "Oh, I couldn't do that," the man said, his voice rough but kind, a hint of a smile tugging at his lips, as if the gesture caught him off guard after so long being overlooked. Tom stepped into the aisle, his tone steady. "Please, you've done so much for all of us. Let me do this for you." And the sincerity in his words hung between them, simple but real. A moment passed, the cabin noise fading as nearby passengers glanced up. A woman setting down her knitting, a man peering over his glasses, a young couple turning to watch with quiet interest. The veteran chuckled softly, nodding. "Well, all right then, but only if I can treat you to a coffee when we land." And Tom grinned. "You've got a deal." The flight attendant stepped in, her smile wide. "That's awfully kind of you, Mr. Hanks," and she helped the old man settle into the first-class seat, his hands resting gratefully on the armrests as Tom picked up his bag and headed to the back. As he walked, he felt eyes on him, some warm with approval, others just curious, but he didn't mind. It wasn't about recognition. It was about doing what felt right, a small thank you to a generation that had built so much. Tom found a spot in economy, squeezing into a middle seat between a woman reading a paperback and a man dozing with a baseball cap pulled low. The space tight but manageable for the short flight to Manchester, New Hampshire, a layover on his way home. The plane took off smoothly, the engines humming a steady tune, and Tom leaned back, letting the rhythm of travel wash over him, content with the simple goodness of the moment. As the flight settled in, the man beside him stirred, glancing toward the front where the veteran now sat, then leaned over, his voice low but friendly. "You know who that is, don't you?" Tom turned, a little surprised. "No, should I?" And the man smiled, a glint of pride in his eyes. "That's Joseph Monroe. Fought in World War II, one of those quiet heroes you don't hear about much anymore." The name didn't mean anything to Tom, but the way the man said it, with a reverence that felt earned, made him listen closer. What did he do? The guy nodded. "Paratrooper, jumped into Normandy, saved a lot of lives, then came home and worked as a teacher for years. Never bragged about it. Just lived a good life helping folks. Tom felt a warmth spread through him, picturing this man, Joseph, not just as a soldier, but as someone who kept giving. And he glanced toward the front, catching Joseph's eye for a moment, a small nod passing between them. "That's something," Tom said softly, and the man beside him chuckled. "Sure is. Makes you think about what matters, doesn't it?" The cabin grew quiet again, passengers sipping drinks or gazing out windows, the flight attendant stopping by to offer Joseph a cup of tea, her smile lingering as she handed it over with a gentle, "Thank you for your service." Tom watched, a swell of gratitude in his chest, not just for Joseph, but for all the veterans like him, the ones who'd faced the unimaginable and still built lives of dignity and purpose. Then the pilot's voice came over the intercom, calm and steady. "Folks, we've hit cruising altitude. Should be landing in Manchester right on time." Tom relaxed, the simplicity of the flight a balm after his hectic week. But a few minutes later, the speaker crackled again, the pilot's tone shifting slightly. "We're getting a small delay from air traffic control. Just a quick systems check. We'll be back on course soon." The man beside Tom raised an eyebrow. That's a little odd," but shrugged it off, and Tom nodded, figuring it was routine, nothing to dwell on, though he couldn't shake a tiny flicker of curiosity. He glanced at Joseph again, the old man sipping his tea, looking out the window with a peaceful expression, and Tom smiled to himself, glad he'd made the swap, glad this quiet hero got a moment of comfort. The flight continued smoothly, the cabin settling into a gentle rhythm, the soft clink of cups and rustle of pages blending with the hum of the engines. Tom leaned back, letting his thoughts drift to home, to the garden he'd been tending, the roses he hoped were still blooming, when the flight attendant approached Joseph again, her voice warm. "Mr. Monroe, can I get you anything else?" Joseph shook his head. "No, thank you. This is plenty." And the attendant hesitated, then added, "I just want you to know, my granddad was in the war too. It means a lot to see folks like you treated right." Tom overheard, his heart lifting at the exchange, a small reminder of how these moments rippled outward, touching lives in ways you couldn't always see. The man beside him spoke up again. "He's the real deal, you know. My uncle used to tell stories about guys like him. Never wanted the spotlight. Just did what needed doing." Tom nodded. "That's the kind I admire most." And the man grinned. "Me too. Makes your day a little brighter, doesn't it?" A few rows ahead, an older woman turned around, her silver hair catching the light. "I saw what you did, Mr. Hanks. That was mighty decent of you." Tom waved it off. "Just seemed fair." And she smiled. "Well, it's folks like you and him that keep this country good." Her words simple, but carrying a weight that settled over him like a warm blanket. The pilot's voice returned. "All right, folks, we're cleared to resume our route." Landing in about 20 minutes, and a murmur of relief passed through the cabin, the delay forgotten as quickly as it came. Tom glanced at Joseph, who caught his eye and raised his teacup slightly, a silent thank you that needed no words, and Tom felt a quiet pride, not in himself, but in the chance to honor someone who'd earned it. As the plane began its descent, the man beside Tom leaned over once more. "You ever think about how one little thing can change a whole day?" Tom considered it. "Yeah, sometimes it's the small stuff that sticks with you." And the man nodded, like giving up a seat. "Turns out to be more than just a seat, doesn't it?" The landing gear hummed beneath them, the plane touching down with a gentle thud, and passengers began gathering their things, the usual shuffle of travel resuming. Tom waited as Joseph stood, slow and careful, the flight attendant helping him with his bag, and when he reached the aisle, he turned to Tom, his voice steady. "You're a good man. I owe you that coffee." Tom smiled. "I'll hold you to it." And they stepped off the plane together, the bustle of the terminal fading into the background as they walked toward the coffee shop a few passengers nodding their way with quiet respect. The woman from earlier caught up. "Mind if I join you too? My husband was a vet too. I'd love to hear some stories." And Joseph chuckled. Plenty to go around. They sat together, Tom, Joseph, and a handful of others who'd overheard and pulled up chairs, the conversation flowing over steaming cups, stories of the war mingling with laughter and nods of understanding. Joseph spoke of jumping into the dark over Normandy, the fear and the brotherhood, then teaching kids history in a small town, his voice steady with a pride that didn't boast, but simply was. Tom listened, his coffee warm in his hands, struck by how this man's life, so full of quiet courage, had crossed his own in such a simple way, a seat given up turning into a moment shared. The group grew, more passengers joining, drawn by the warmth of it, and Tom realized this wasn't just about one flight. It was about connection, about remembering what veterans like Joseph had given and how a little kindness could bring it all back to life. Someone asked, "What made you do it, Tom, giving up that seat?" And he shrugged. "Felt like the least I could do. He's the one who did the hard part." Joseph shook his head. "Takes all kinds to keep things going." And the table murmured agreement, a shared sense of gratitude filling the air, simple but profound. The afternoon stretched on, the coffee shop buzzing with their voices, and Tom felt a lightness he hadn't in weeks, a reminder that goodness didn't need to be loud, it just needed to be real. As they parted ways, Joseph clasped his hand. "Thanks again, means more than you know." And Tom nodded, "Same to you," knowing this small act had turned into something he'd carry with him, a story of respect and the quiet power of doing right.